Hi everyone, and welcome back to your second part of communication and development of the self. So, yesterday, or again, we have spoken about Mead, and we've spoken about how he thought, again, the individual is like a part of a bigger circle, which is the society. Now, Irving Goffman, he was one of his students, and he wanted to take some of his ideas and to develop it. And like we called Mead a symbolic interactionist, we call Goffman an impression manager. Right. So Goffman here was more interested in the interaction and the norms of social interaction. Basically, what better way to identify social norms than in a place where they are routinely broken? So Goffman strived again to define situations in order to manage the impressions. Again, remember when we talked about impression management, maybe in the previous video. So basically, what is impression management? It's one of those crucial mechanisms especially in communication. You are in control of your own impression, and it basically puts you in much of control as the situation. Let me give you an example. How am I in control of my impression? Therefore, I'm in control of my situation. You hang out with a few friends, and maybe one of your friends told you that maybe they are looking to hook you up with someone, or like to have you meet someone in the hanging out. So what do? You are in control of your impression. Maybe you want to really dress up. You want to put some effort in the way you look. And then you go, and then you feel like, okay, I have now I have control of the situation. I look good, I'm here on time, I know my friend, who's she gonna hook me up, so I'm kind of in control of the situation. Okay, now imagine you're not in control of the situation. Your friend told you, we're going out to a party, and it's a casual party, okay? So you say, okay, cool. So you think you're in control of your impression. So you wear casual clothes, again, like a casual dress, or like some jeans and a nice top, or like a nice t-shirt. Again, it's a casual party, or this is what you thought. But you go to that party, and then you find out that everyone is wearing formally. It's a black tie party. There's dresses, there are suits. How much of a control are you in this current situation? You have zero control in the situation. How can you manage your impression? You'll feel like, I feel very shy, I feel very awkward, everyone is very dressed up. What am I doing here? So Goffman was really interested in contrasting, your impressions, right? You have, of course, your clothes, your hairstyle, your cosmetics, and of course, other things such as your sex, your height, your race. So according again to Goffman, we define the situation when we, in order to manage the impression. So again, it's you want to try to be in control of your emotion as much as control of the situation that actually permits. Remember that with Georgie Bear Mead, whose ideas were very influential, especially on Goffman and other symbolic interactionists, the idea of consciousness, the mind that arises out of social communication. So in particular, human capacity that creates meaning through symbolic behavior creates the self. Now, Goffman here, he believed that, he saw all interpersonal communication as what we call dramatological in character, which we'll get to see what does dramatological means, and social lives as a kind of theoretical performance. Now, do you remember this one? We have seen this in the previous video with the how the self, you see the arrow over here, that you try to identify your other people. You want to, I see myself in you, and then other people, objects, whatever. But here we want to look at the other way around. I want to see what kind of impression I put onto other people, into animals, and what kind of meaning does it come out of all of this. Now let's discuss a few things. First, before we go into the drama and the theoretical performance that Goffman speaks about. So basically, what is a social institution? So of course, anything that we are in is currently a social institution, like Columbia College is a social institution. So it's a complex of positions, roles, norms, of course, values. If I'm talking about Columbia College, positions of, we have all the way from the president to the vice president, to the accountants, to the staff, to the faculty, the instructors, the students, and everything in between. So that's the positions, and of course everyone has a role. So you as a student, your role is to, to study, you pay your fees on time, you give your assignments on time. My role as an instructor is to be able to deliver you the material on time, to give you the information you need in terms of our course, and so on. Of course, our values like the guidelines and the policies and so on. You can apply this on pretty much everywhere else. You can apply this on your own culture. It is a social institution. You can apply this on a school, on a religious institution, anywhere. So again, we're talking about particular types of social structure. Again, you have a pyramid that has people organizing relatively stable patterns of human activity. So again, like we are students and instructors and everyone else, different activities throughout the throughout the college, with, of course, respect to fundamental problems in producing life-sustaining resources, such as, if we're talking about the college, such as not draining you with so much work, for example, or students absolutely not showing up on time. So I'm talking about resources that makes both of our lives easier. Other ideas of institutions, again, they could be formal, they could be informal institutions. So anything that has social life could be a discourse, political institutions, of course, economic, legal institutions, and so on. Now, when I say political institutions or economic institutions, does it necessarily mean formal institutions? Definitely not. The system here of common assumptions. Now, some formal, some informal. Let me actually grab the whiteboard so I can show you this. I'm so sorry, for some reason my laptop is super slow today. There we go. Okay, so here we have what we call the system of common assumptions. What is a formal institutions here? So again, we have, they could be formal, it could be informal. Basically anything that guide our conduct and interaction in the college. Again, if I want to put the example of Columbia College, that's the system of common assumptions. So anything that guides our conduct and interaction, compromises, is it compromises? That might not be the correct spelling, so sorry about that. Compromises it as a social institution. Terrible spelling, sorry guys. So what kind of guidelines do we have? So for example, being on time, both me and you, studying for the exams, not cheating for the exams, the staff salaries are paid at certain intervals, ceremony that commemorates your completion of your graduate studies, and so on. So these are all guidelines. We call them here common assumptions, because we all know, obviously, I have to study to pass, right? I don't need this as a rule. I don't need to write this somewhere. We all know that you have to study. I have to teach you to be able to get my salary, and so on. Let's go back to our PowerPoint. Okay. Yeah, sorry about it's being, for some reason, super slow. There we go. So let's take a look at this social institution. It is a social institution. It's something that's happening. We have roles, we have positions, we have values. But here, this person, the driver of the car, see, it looks here, it says confused. He was not in control of this social institution. So what does it mean when we are unsure what the appropriate thing to do in a social situation? Like the example of a party. You, again, your friend told you just a casual party, and then you find that everyone is fully dressed. Or you go out to meet with maybe your boss or your coworker, and then you find out that it's a job interview. Now here again, you are unsure what is the appropriate thing to do, because these social situations you are not informed of, you are not in control of it. So for Goffman here, our social institutions basically are the products of ongoing interaction and negotiation. Basically, social institutions are the result of interaction between two actors. For example, two actors, me as their handy instructor and you guys as students. So sender and receiver. And we have the social institutions, which is our class happening from Monday to Thursday. Then for some reason, our social institutions changed, radically different definitions of what situations than we do. So in participating in any social institution, we bring a definition of the situation to it and proceed on that assumption, right? So others might have slightly different definitions of the situation. I'll give you another example. Um, you like someone, all right? And then you told them, hey, let's go out on a date. And that person said, I'm not sure if I want to go out on a date. So you convince them. Now there is a disagreement here. Is this a date or is not a date? But then you convince them, you know what? Okay, it's not a date, but let's go out for a cup of coffee. So you go out for a cup of coffee and there's a meeting where disagreement about shared purposes was expressed, because she's going out for a cup of coffee and you're going out because it's a date. And now you're unsure about what's happening. The situation has changed. I want you to watch this video. I'm going to put the link in the description box that I want you to watch, and I'd love to hear some of your own analysis. So I want to know what your analysis of this video and how does it make sense in the social institutions. Now it says here social institutions are fluid. What does fluidity means? Negotiation, situation, and fluidity. Now, in a negotiation, again, you're negotiating, hey, come out with me on a date. And I'm saying, no, you know what, let's just go out for coffee as friends. So you're negotiating, you're convincing me to go on a date, and I'm convincing you to go out on just a cup of coffee. So when you're negotiating here, your conduct in a concrete situation, which inevitably tries to influence the common understanding of the interaction. So I'm trying to convince you, or one person is going to convince the other and they're going to win. In a situation, now what is a situation? A situation, of course, could be a very concrete interpersonal instance. So it could be a meeting, a date, a job, or an interview, something that is very concrete. However, I want you to know that a situation is not an abstract. It's a real thing that is actually happening. But what we're not sure of is how do we define the situation? It could be an institution or it could be an assumption, like we said about Columbia College. Now, normally, we don't have the authority power to define a situation. So again, most of the time we negotiate, right? Hey, is this a coffee or is this a date? So we're both negotiating. The input of others is very important, is important as our own. However, sometimes there could be some places in power that imbalances often lead to situations being defined more often and more completely by one group. So for example, men over women, straight over LGBT, a religious majority, wealthy people or rich people over poor people, or over exploited workers. They could have more say in the situation, meaning that, for example, I am gonna, as the owner or as the CEO of this company, I'm gonna keep you all here until 9 p.m. to keep on working. Because I hear only one person. There's no negotiation. in this situation, the situation here is very concrete and it's been defined by one party, by one member of the communication process. This one member who has more power over the others. Now, finally, when we talk about fluidity, when we go back to the previous slide, social institutions are fluid. The question here, meaning that, could the social institutions change? Could it change how it looked like? Yes. Now, fluidity here is the state of being changeable by participants. Applies to social institutions as well as concrete interactions. Like, we both agree, again, you're trying to convince me, we're negotiating, go out with me on a date, I'm telling you no, and then you say, fine, okay, you know what, fine, we'll go out for just a cup of coffee, both me and you. So I agree, and we go out for just, for example, like a Starbucks, we go grab a cup of coffee, and it's just coffee between friends. Sorry, just grabbing a sip of water. Now let's say we are having so much fun in this date. It's actually, better than I expected. So here, the situation has changed. It's fluid. It's like a liquid. It took another shape. It started out as a cup of coffee and then it ended as an actual date because it changed it throughout this few hours that we were in. Another example is one of my previous job interviews. It's an actual story. So I go in, I'm prepared for my job interview. They ask me, the normal questions such as, what are you going to do with the situation with the students? What's your method of teaching? What do you do about this? Blah, blah, blah. And then it turned from an actual job interview to a casual hangout. I was talking to the HR representative and the president of the school. For example, about life, my previous job, my work as a journalist, the political situation in Egypt. So it had a fluid, changeable meaning that both parties agreed on. Right? So it turned from a very formal job interview to an informal meeting. So it has the state of being, again, changeable by both participants. Again, for you guys to think about other situations. Do you think that can you think of an example where two people have been in the same situation, but maybe they disagreed about what the situation was? This video that I'm going to put in the link is actually very informative about how a situation could have different meaning to different people. Now, dramatological analysis. Now, I've mentioned this before. So when Goffman argues that life is a theater, he is very, very serious. Now, we are performative in ways that stake out subject positions or roles within the social order that we are part of. Children in middle school, for example, know this instinctively. I'm not going to explain this part because we're going to see it later on, and maybe we can discuss it on Thursday. Now, we communicate through symbols that provide cues to common definition of the situation. Again, like clothing, you wear different clothes depending on the situation, right? Like you cannot go to a job interview when you're wearing very poorly or very or not well dressed. Same thing with your hairstyle, same thing with your cosmetics, and so on. Again, so let's think about children middle school, for example. They really know this. They want to fit in. They earn social recognitions from peers. They want to avoid embarrassment. That's one of the things that the main thing we do in school and pretty much anywhere else. So when I say that life is a theater, I'm kind of performing somehow. When I go out to the world, I put on a performance. Now, I want you to keep an open mind when I say I put on a performance. That does not necessarily mean that I am a double-faced person or a hypocritical person. But when you are in your home, when you are in the comfort of your home, you will always going to be more comfortable, more relaxed than you are in your day-to-day work, for example. Life is a theater here even gets more explained in the next slide. Now, he talks about face mask and self-worth. Now, when we construct a mask, you adjust the person we project to others based on these cues. When you don't like someone, for example, tell me about your face. How does your face look when you're talking to someone that you're not really fond of? Maybe it's going to be angry. Maybe it's going to be you're giving them a plastic face. You're not giving them any responses, right? He refers to the face mask and self-worth to the front stage, backstage character of everyday life. For example, I'm sure some of you, for example, work in restaurants, maybe like waiters or cashiers or something. So what happens when you're on a front stage? You're smiling, you're being nice to the customer. Hello, sir. How can I take your order? So and so. But then you go back to the kitchen. You be like, okay, you have to fix something to this idiot out there because they want something that is not in the menu. So this is what is a front stage, backstage is. We all have front stage and backstage. So when I'm with you, when I'm teaching, even if it's online or even in a classroom, that is my front stage. I put on some cues like here. There's a specific clothing that I have on. There's specific hairstyle or slash hijab. Same thing with the makeup that I wear and so on. But when I am at my home, when I'm at my house, that is my backstage. Students are not here. So for example, I'm grading papers and I'm like, oh my God, how did they reach this conclusion? That's a completely different thing. So that is a backstage. Think about again, living room versus family room. You are in your bedroom, right? You're reading something or you're listening to some music, and your mom or your dad gets to your room and they tell you, come out because we have some relatives out there. Please come say hi. And you're so bored. Oh my God, these relatives, they are always here. What happens next? You get dressed, you put on a smile, and you go out and you say, oh, hi, auntie, I haven't seen you for a long time. But in your backstage, you were just, I don't like them. Why do I have to go say hi? But your front stage differs. Again, that's another thing that I would like to hear some of your own situations or some of your own examples. What other examples of this front stage and backstage? So this is what I say with front stage and backstage. This is very similar to this dramatological analysis. We always have different ways of drama in our lives. And I'm not just saying drama in terms of like gossiping and things, but the way we wake up every day, we go to work or we go to school, and we feel a little bit different when our out there in the world. Again, we're not talking about front stage and backstage as someone who's double faced or hypocritical, but it's in our everyday life, in our everyday nature. Now, in face mask and self-worth, again, I'm going to put you out this video, and let me know what you guys think of it. Our mask must be consistent with, of course, because now if it's not inconsistent, that means that you're not the same person. It has to be consistent with who you are as a person. For example, being an introvert, being an extrovert, who we want to be, how I'd like others to see me. Of course, your role interaction. Are you the sender? Are you the receiver? And of course, your integration of roles of interaction. How you perform this role. As you're a student, or you are a teacher, you are a parent, you're a child, and so on. Now we come to the very end of Goffman and Mead. So we have some similarities here. Of course, both argue that the self is created through actions of others, your interaction. So as a result, they kind of go against Western communities as the idea of individual. We're going to get to know what is individual exactly next class. As prior to the society. And believe it is hard to distinguish, of course, between the self and society. So again, I am not being again something like I'm not a part of my society, or my society is not a part of me. So of course they are. Some of the differences that Goffman and Mead had. So Mead says that the self is a mind that created through internal dialogue. Remember, I, me, and myself. This is how you grow. Goffman here says the self is a ceremonial object which is created by deference, which is other, and demeanor means one's your own action. Mead says once the self is developed, the self is permanent. Goffman says the ceremonial self is always at the risk of profanation from others, maybe even growing, maturing, or maybe the other way around. Mead says the self is inner life, the mind and one's thoughts. And Goffman says the self is the image, the face, or the dignity of the person. What is the face? It's over here, your face mask, right? So think about again our role in interaction. What role do we take up in the performance in a given situation? And what kind of integration of roles in our, again, in all interactions? So what kind of consistent behavior that we kind of have to keep? Let me show you a summary from the reading that is really important for you to go ahead and read. Now this is Goffman's reading. This is page 30 over here, and it's page 6 in the PDF itself. So this is a really nice summary that puts a lot of elements together. So again, we talk about things like, again, dress, verbal and nonverbal cues, of course. So again, for example, you go to a job interview or a date, or even you're sitting with your extended family, but the way you dress gives an impression. That's what we talk about impression management. Your verbal cues, for example, you're saying like whatever, duh, or what kind of conversation you're giving. And of course, nonverbal cues. Let's say again, you're on a date and you're slouching in your chair. Do you know what's to slouch? Is to kind of sit very lazy in your chair. In what kind of impression does that give out? So again, we let view these variables, like we said, of course, symbols back in semiotics or cues. That was a very bad one. Yeah, there we go. And again, we let basically stand, and they give a lot of messages to others. So based on different cues, again, they are the means through which we orient our actions and attribute significance to what is going on. Again, to the situation that you're in. So based on these cues, we have those three that we mentioned earlier. Again, who you are, who we'd like to be, and so on. We talk also about the negotiation. This process, again, it depends on the rules, both of you, that you put. And again, the idea of obeying rules without being conscious of them. Let's read the story. A while ago, a young child informed me I put it, see this, he's of course a child, the cookies in the fridge yesterday. Now I know, you and I know that there's no such word as put it, yet I had no trouble at all understanding the meaning. That's a very good one, actually. In fact, he had applied a rule here. He put ed to indicate past tense. So he wants to kind of, again, show the situation here, or be in control of the situation. Interaction. There are conventions which allow the negotiation to be racialized or taken for granted. Classroom, of course, one of the biggest negotiation situations here. Students come in and sit facing the spot where I will stand as I lecture. I come in and take the expected positions. When I'm ready to begin, I negotiate with the students for their attention. They fall silent and I proceed to speak. Now here, remember when I was saying someone that has more power of authority. Now, if you fail to fall silent or you fail to pay attention, here I am in an instructor or professor has more power or more position for that person to tell you, for example, okay, there's no class, or oh, please leave that class, and so on. So that's pretty much it about communication development of the selves. I hope it was an easy lecture, and of course I am happy to talk to you about all of your questions and your and anything that you guys are confused with, and of course I'd love to hear some of your own examples in Goffman and Mead, and I will see you on Thursday. All right, best of luck and see you guys soon.